Have you ever seen the Joshua Bell subway station experiment? If you haven't, I'm about to show it to you. In 2007, Joshua Bell set up his violin case outside a subway station in Washington, DC. And he played the violin. He played 6 classical pieces for about 45 minutes. Over 1,000 people, 1,097 actually, if you go through the video frame by frame, 1,097 people walked past him. Only 7 people stopped to listen in that 45 minutes. He collected a total of $32 in tips. Here's a grainy 2007 version of Joshua Bell's little experiment. Only one lady recognised Joshua Bell, a lady at the end with the white bag. Because you see, you might not know, but Joshua Bell is one of the finest violinists in the world. He's released over 40 albums, and he tours the world as the feature violinist in all sorts of concerts. Only 3 days before that was filmed, he played a sold-out show in Boston with an average ticket price of over $100 each. That's 2007, so today it would have been $150 a ticket. You can see Taylor Swift for cheaper than you can go and watch that guy play violin. He played 6 of the same pieces that he'd played in Boston 3 nights before, and only 7 people stopped to listen. Why?
Standing in the wrong corner. All people on the other side.
Because Joshua Bell, not because of where he's standing, because Joshua Bell playing violin outside a train station is a paradox. It's something that seems to be true, seems to be untrue, or seems to be impossible, but is actually true, because your brain tells you that when you see a busker playing, that person's not very good. Your brain tells you this must be an average musician, even though if you stop to listen, he's playing pretty decently. He's playing a Stradivarius in that clip. It's worth $3.5 million, the violin that he's playing on. But your brain tells you that he must be an average musician because really good musicians don't play in subway stations for loose change, right? That's not how the world works. Brilliant musicians play in theatres. They play, even though he's playing the same music that he played in those theatres, that's what brilliant musicians do. They have roadies and they have security people around them and they play in front of thousands. They don't play in a train station. Your brain can't connect those two things together. It's impossible. It would be untrue for someone like Joshua Bell to be playing in a train station. It's a paradox. We're in the third episode of our Paradox series. If you want to catch up, you can catch all of our messages on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search for Tide Church. We're talking about paradoxes because Jesus talked a lot in paradoxes. Jesus often said things that appear on the surface to be untrue or impossible, but are actually true. In the first episode, we heard Jesus say that whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. That's a paradox. Losing your life is the exact opposite of saving your life, isn't it? If you want to save your life, then the very last thing that you would do is to lose your life. But Jesus is explaining how things work in his kingdom. When people focus on themselves, when their world becomes all about themselves, all about getting and keeping things for themselves, not only will people like that not ultimately save their lives, he's saying in the end, people like that will actually lose their lives. In contrast, he's saying people who give their lives away for Jesus and for others, in the end, those people will save their lives and ultimately live forever. It's a paradox, something that seems to be untrue or impossible, but is actually true. Last week, we heard Jesus' words to Paul when he said, "My power is perfected in weakness." Paul responds in a letter by saying, "That's why, for the sake of Christ, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." Now, we live in a world that teaches us to celebrate strengths and to avoid weakness. But Jesus says there's power in weakness. Because only when we are weak in ourselves can we trust God fully, can we lean on him fully and find strength and power in him. So it is true to say, when I am weak, then I am strong. Today we're going to look at another paradox from the life of Jesus, and it starts with James and John's helicopter mum. Maybe the very first recorded helicopter parent in history. If you've got a Bible, you can open it to Matthew chapter 20. As always, there's Bibles on the back table. Download the YouVersion Bible app on your phone and get it that way too. So we're in Matthew chapter 20. If you've got a printed Bible, you thumb through about 2/3 of the way and you find the boys' names, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John all together, and Matthew's the first of those. We're in Matthew chapter 20, verse 20. It's easy to remember, Matthew 20:20. I'm going to start reading from verse 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons, that's James and John's mum, came to Jesus with her sons and kneeling down asked a favour of him. "What is it you want?" Jesus asked. She said, "Grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom." The assumption here is that James and John's mum has heard that Jesus is talking a lot about this kingdom thing. And she must have in her mind that he's talking about a real kind of kingdom, with castles and thrones and soldiers and power. And she must think he's talking about that kind of kingdom. And so she comes to put in a vote for her boys. She wants her boys to get the best seats in the new kingdom. Because if there's going to be a new kingdom, there's going to be generals and there's going to be commanders and there's going to be people who sort of oversee the kingdom, and she wants to make sure that her boys get the good jobs. Jump to verse 24. When the 10 heard about this, so James and John are part of the 12, so there's 10 more, right? When the other 10 heard about what's going on, they were indignant. That's Bible language to say they're pretty ticked off about what's going on. They're indignant with the two brothers. Which is funny because it was the mother, but anyway, that's the way the world goes, isn't it? They're indignant with the two brothers. Jesus calls them all together. Got to sort this out. Jesus calls them together and he says, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles, that's people who don't follow God, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man, which is the way Jesus talked about himself, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus calls the 12 together and he says, you all know how power and success works in the world around us, right? The successful people are at the top and they tell other people what to do. They lord their power over them. They exercise their power over the people who are below them. They tell other people what to do. Poor people serve rich people. Little people serve big people. Brilliant musicians play in stadiums. Poor musicians play outside train stations. You know the way the world works. And Jesus says, but not so with you. It's going to be different with you who are following me, he says. Because whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave. Jesus says that if you want to follow me, if you want to be a follower of Jesus, you're going to do things differently. We're going to do things differently. And anyone who wants to be great in Jesus' eyes must be a servant. The person who wants to be first, in other words, who wants to be most successful, who wants to be at the top, must be a slave to all. And when he says slave, the slaves were those who were sort of below the servants. They're the lowest person in a household. They're a servant to the servants. And then just in case the 12 are not quite sure what Jesus means, Jesus says, and if you want an example, if you need to know exactly how this looks, look at me. He says, because the Son of Man didn't come to serve, to be served, but to serve rather, and to give his life as a ransom for many. He's saying, look at the way that I live and follow me. And get ready because I'm about to show you the ultimate act of service. And he's talking about the cross. He's talking about what we call Easter. He says, you want to know what real service looks like? I'm about to show you the ultimate act of putting other people first. I'm about to show you what real sacrifice and service of other people looks like. Jesus says that the path to real success, the path to greatness, in his eyes and in the eyes of the God that he serves, is to serve others. And this is a paradox, right? This seems to be untrue. This seems to not make sense. This seems to not be possible. But Jesus is saying this is the truth. And so the question that we have to ask ourselves sitting here in Australia in 2024 is simply, do we actually believe Jesus? Because we live in a world that says that service is the opposite of greatness. When you're not great, that's when you serve. When you start your first job, you're not great at your job yet, that's when you take the low job and you serve others above you. You begin at the bottom. When you first join a sports team or a dance troupe or something like that and you're not real good, that's when you sit on the bench. If you want to be a movie star, you've got to start out at the bottom. You start being an extra, someone in the back of the scene, serving the people who are in the front of the scene. But when you're great, when you've made it, when you've climbed the ladder, when you've got to the point of success, then other people start serving you, right? I mean, if you're really good at your job, if you get better at your job, then one day you might be a manager. If you're really good at being a manager, one day you might be an exec, one day you might be a CEO. And then everybody serves you. If you get really good at dance, if you get really good at sport, if you get really good at anything like that, then you get the best position on the team, right? You get the first choice of where you play or how you dance, and then other people will support you. And of course, if you make it in the movies, you end up being the one in the trailer with the big star on the door. That's how life works. In fact, when you think about it, one of the signs that you are a success, one of the signs that you've made it, one of the signs that you are actually great is in fact that other people serve you. This is what Jesus means when he said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them and their high officials exercise authority over them. Jesus says, you all know this is the way the world works. But Jesus goes on to say, there's another way to be great. In fact, there's another way to be really great, real, lasting greatness. If you want to be great in God's eyes and in God's world, you need to serve others, to put others before yourself. Jesus says this is what real greatness looks like. It's a paradox, something that seems to be untrue or that seems to be impossible, but is actually true. So the question we're going to ask ourselves this morning when we jump into our groups is, do we believe Jesus? Do we trust that what Jesus is saying is true? Because if you're anything like me, you'll hear these words and there'll be a part of you that will want to respond and say, yeah, I believe that, but. There's always a but, you know? For me, there's a but and says, yeah, but I've got to look after myself first to an extent, right? Don't I? Yeah, I believe this, but I don't want to get taken for granted by people. I don't want to be a doormat, you know, that saying. I don't want to do that. Yeah, but I just need to focus on me right now, just for a bit, get a few things sorted for me, and then I'll be able to serve people later. You know, when I've got a bit more money, when my job's a bit more, you know, a bit more sorted, when I've got a bit more time, when I've just sorted things out with my kids and whatever, then I'll be able to serve people. But right now, I just need to focus on me, right? It takes a level of trust to believe what Jesus is saying is true. It takes a faith to serve others, to put others before yourself, and a trust that God will still make things work for you. That's actually what it means when we say in churches, you know, that I trust Jesus. That's actually what it means, right? When we say I have faith in Jesus, this is actually what it means. That I'm prepared to follow what he says, even though it doesn't really make a lot of sense in parts of my mind. I'm prepared to trust him, prepared to follow him, prepared to act on that, and have faith that he's got my future in his hands. That he's got the outcome of my life in control when I'll give it up and do something that doesn't make sense to me, and I'll trust that he's got things in control. That's what it actually means when we say, yeah, I trust God. I have faith in Jesus. That's why we have this banner at the front of our church. This is sort of our statement about who we want to be. It says, we want to be a people in this place at Tide who are devoted to Jesus, living our lives following Jesus' example and teaching wherever we are, no matter the cost. This is the example and teaching. This is the stuff we're talking about, right? We're saying we want to be a people who follow Jesus' example and teaching, no matter the cost, because there's a cost to doing this, right? Jesus says, yeah, there's a cost. Look at the example I'm about to set you. I'll show you the ultimate cost. You look at Jesus on the cross and you just got to go, wow. Jesus gave everything for other people. I mean, there's no bigger way to put others before yourself than to give your life for another person, is there? That's like the ultimate. There's no coming back from that. You know what I'm saying? Actually, there was for Jesus, but that's another story. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. Don't send me emails, all right? Jesus says that if you want to be great, this is what greatness looks like to God. This is what greatness looks like in the kingdom of God. This is what greatness looks like for people who want to follow me. Everyone else around you is going to think greatness is about being the boss, about having other people serve you and about having other people below you. But real greatness, Jesus says, is to serve others, to put others first and to sacrifice yourself for others. Now, I could stand here this morning and just kind of what we do in church, and I could give you 5 ways to serve Jesus, right? I was thinking about doing that, but it occurred to me during the week that you don't need me to do that, do you? Because we all know how to serve others. I mean, you know, you don't need to sit there and, with a piece of paper and a pen and think, I wonder what you know what it is to put others first at school. You know what it is to serve others in your workplace. You know what it is to put others before yourself, to put your friends before yourself, to put others in your family before yourself. You know what that looks like. And if you're anything like me, when you fail to serve others, when you fail to put others before yourself, it's not because you don't know what to do. It's not because you ran out of ideas for serving others. If you're anything like me, when I fail to serve others and to put others before myself, if I'm really honest, it's because in those moments I'm not quite sure I really trust the words of Jesus. I'm not quite sure that living this way will really work out best for me. I'm not quite sure that this is actually the path for greatness. And actually maybe the comfortable life where I look after myself and where it doesn't cost me anything, maybe that's a better way to go, if I'm really honest. You're not sure if you actually want to pay the cost in the end. That's the truth for me, and I'm guessing it's probably the truth for many of you. It's not that you don't know what it is to serve others. You just need to decide if you want to do it. Not in a whole of life way, but in a day by day and a moment by moment. And that's the decision that's up to each of us. But before I ask you to decide on that decision, let me remind you that Jesus doesn't say this because it's a nice thing to do. He's not saying serve others because it's nice. He's not even saying serve others because they deserve it. He's not even saying serve others because they're good people. He's actually not even saying serve others because they really need it. Jesus is saying serve others because this is the way for you to live greatness in your life. He's saying if you want to be great, really great, if you want to be successful, and he's talking about a real kind of success, not a sort of passing success that comes and goes and dies when you die. If you want to be really successful, if you want to live a significant and a purposeful, meaningful life, the way to do that, the best way to do that is to serve others. If you want to change the world in a good way, if you want to, a phrase some people use is, leave a legacy. Do something with your life that's going to be meaningful to you, that when you get to the end of your life, you can smile and say, I did that. That was good. Sacrifice for others and put others ahead of yourself, says Jesus. We got an email this week from Coolock House. They got all the donations that we made from our Christmas giving. I want to read you just the very first sentence of their email. This is how they started their email. Hi Megan, the email went to Megan. Hi Megan, oh my goodness, this is amazing! Exclamation mark. I had no idea the donations would be so significant. It is truly appreciated. And then the email went on to explain, the timing and the process and how they're going to get it done and whatever. And the last line of the email repeated much the same thoughts. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. I had no idea the donations would be so significant. I don't know about you, but when I read that, I felt pretty good, you know. I read that and thought, I want more of that in my life. That felt great, really properly great to me. That's the kind of feeling that only happens when we put others before ourselves, as many of us did before Christmas. We took money that we could have spent on ourselves, that we could have spent on our families, and we gave it to people that we've never met and we probably never will meet. Jesus' words sound untrue, they sound impossible, but that's the paradox. Something that seems untrue or impossible, but is actually true. He says this is the way to live a great life. This is the way to live a life that is a real success. This is the way to get to the end of your life and think, I did great. And as I said, the decision's really up to us, to each of us. Do we want to follow, trust, believe Jesus and live that way?